Welcome back. ପିଲାମାନେ ତୁମମାନଙ୍କୁ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଆଉ ଥରେ ସ୍ୱାଗତ. We will today come to a new part, a new theme for discussion, that is cleanliness and save the environment campaigns. Now cleanliness and save the environment campaigns have assumed great importance in the last decade. When the present Narendra Modi government came, he restarted or started to emphasize cleanliness and Swachh Bharat Abhijan. This mission was started. But all along we have been emphasizing on cleanliness. Mahatma Gandhi, right from during the freedom struggle, he emphasized cleanliness very much. As you know, even in recent past, in the 1980s and 90s, even in a city like Surat, plague did spread. That was quite jittery. Can you think that in the 20th century, fag end of the 20th century, a city can have plague? And one of the major reasons was of course cleanliness, lack of cleanliness. That did send a shock wave throughout the country, and fortunately the plague could be contained and it did not spread. But in past, not only in India but also in Europe, but for lack of cleanliness, many a time disease have spread, particularly cholera. Though it is waterborne, if the water gets infected, a river water gets infected, it flows down in the river, and as it flows down in the river, people continue to die. Many cholera patients without consciousness were thrown into the river in China also, and also through that cholera had spread widely into China. It was also, smallpox was there. Smallpox is of course not caused by cleanliness, lack of cleanliness, but nevertheless it is also, even if it is airborne, but certain things, precaution measures could have been taken to reduce the virulence. But of course today world is free from smallpox. So cleanliness has been a concern for long, and in Europe, in the wake of Industrial Revolution started in the middle of the 18th century, around 1750, 40 to 50, it made a small beginning in England and in France. And this Industrial Revolution did create slums, and slum management became an issue, cleanliness in the slums became an issue, and it did jeopardize urban life in Europe. In the 1.5 century that has passed since the beginning of Industrial Revolution, population has been increasing also. Many countries like Japan and some of the European countries have reached zero growth rate almost. That means population is static. In some places it has started declining, but as a whole in the world, population is still growing. Growth is very high. In India it is not high any longer, but in the African continent population is growing very highly, and there are also other South Asian countries where population is growing, like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on and so forth. So what happens is that cleanliness becomes an issue once the world is overpopulated. And in Europe, as I said earlier, cleanliness had become an issue about 150 years back, but things have very much improved in Europe. It has been managed. But then environmental part is there. Because of the Industrial Revolution, establishment of industry in many parts of the world, two things are happening. One is that forest is getting cleaned up. Even today, at an alarming rate, forest is getting cleaned up in Brazil. The Amazon Valley is getting cleaned up. And to add to that, population is increasing in many parts of the world. Because of the population pressure also, people possibly need more and more land, and forest gets cleaned for land, industrialization. Forest products are in great demand for industrialization, and as a whole we have pressure on nature and forest is getting cleared. Once forest is getting cleared, naturally the carbon dioxide also increases and pollutants also increases due to industries. It has become almost unmanageable in many parts of the world, including India. Out of the 10 most populated, 10 most polluted city of the world, 4 or 5 belong to India only. China, India, and we are dependent on coal, and coal is, as you know, is not easily renewable. You cannot formulate coal again, and the way we are digging up coal all over the world, including United States of America, we are using a non-renewable source of energy, and in the process we also converting coal into electricity involves lot of pollution. If any one of you have gone to Talcher town, if you have gone to Ongod, if you have gone to Konhia, you will know how it is very harmful to you. There is a layer of black dust throughout day and night in these places. And in Delhi, where your number of vehicles is very high, the number of vehicles and construction work, plus the diesel emission and all that, creates something which we call no longer fog. It is fog plus smog. So, we call it smog. So, it is a very difficult situation. You can't breathe even in some time in winter. It is very difficult to breathe clean air in quite a large number of metro cities of India, whose population has crossed more than 1 crore. So, naturally, this problem was not there 100 years back. So, cleanliness and environment both have become problematic, and it is threatening the very existence of human life. It is, scientists are saying that world was destroyed completely 6 times. Somewhere some little life remained, but it was a mass extinction of species. And if you read the articles in newspapers, even in Odia newspapers, you will come to know that there is a possible threat of the 7th mass extinction of many species of the world. Possibly man is also going to be extinct. That kind of a seriousness is there. So, naturally, large number of NGOs, large number of volunteers are working on both these fields. Both cleanliness and environment are posing threat to human life and life of so many other species in the world, that it is necessary to work for protecting the environment and to ensure a cleanliness, a certain level of cleanliness. Though Hinduism as a religion emphasizes cleanliness quite highly, yet in the day-to-day life of our people, what we find in India is that notwithstanding the commitment to cleanliness in our religion, in our philosophy, even in Islamic philosophy, what we find is that there is gandagi everywhere. We are far from a clean country. So, that is very, very important. So, that is why it is necessary to work for both. If we want to save mankind, we have to save our environment. By just saying Prithvi Shanti, Vanaspati Shanti in our yajnas, we are not going to achieve anything. You can say that we are the first teachers of environment science. Take credit for it and then do nothing for it. That is a beautiful situation in India. We take credit that we are one of the earliest civilization who prayed that Vanaspati be saved, forest be saved, animal world be saved. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. But then what we do, we cannot be very proud of. India cannot be very proud of providing protection to the environment and meeting the carbon dioxide emission restriction. So, that is why it is necessary to work in these two fields. I am not saying that we are not doing anything. There are other countries, including the United States of America, particularly under Trump, refused to stop coal production, refused to stop production of electricity from coal, though it can afford to. It is a rich country, it can afford to. So, but it did not. So, naturally, of course, the new after present President Biden has rolled back the policy of Trump and is trying to do something. But what I am trying to tell you is that in the process of cheaper production of energy, we are all, mankind as a whole, is not conscious enough as to how to protect their environment. And that is why there are some brilliant examples of Indians doing good work for protection of environment. We have many examples. Now, as you know, if a single person has to compensate whatever carbon dioxide he emits out, every minute you take breath in and breathe out, and when you breathe out you throw out carbon dioxide. And when you throw out the carbon dioxide, one person has to plant at least 6 trees per month to compensate this carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide emission that you make. Okay? So, that is the kind of greeniness that we require. So, that means suppose if you live for 1 year, there are 12 months and 6 trees per month, that means 72 trees per year. So, if you live for say 60 years, 60 into 72. If you live say 100 years, then 72 into you can calculate. So, that is how it is, so much is needed. But there is an interesting example. One Sri Jadhav Payeng, he is a tribal boy near Guwahati. Now, if you have ever gone to Guwahati, there the great Brahmaputra flows. It is very wide, much wider than your Mahanadi at Guwahati, and there is an island in that river also. So, that island is called Majuli, middle. Majuli in Ahmiya language means middle. In the middle of the river Brahmaputra, there is a small island, and he lives in that island. It regularly used to get flooded. So, even today it gets flooded occasionally. It is not that it does not get flooded, but he alone for 550 acres of forest he has created in that Majuli island. Once people cut away the trees, and he saw that when the flood comes, after the flood receded, he found thousands of snakes, dead snakes all lying over. Then he realized what is happening. If the snakes are dying, then other animals will die. As you know, it is the food cycle, the food chain. Once that chain is broken, then not one, but all the species related to that chain will die. I was telling you, if there is no tiger in the forest, then what will happen is that the number of deers will multiply, because nobody is there to eat the deers. So, the tigers are dead. So, once the deers number increases beyond what the forest can support, then what will happen is that there will be no trees. And once the number of trees falls, the deers will not get food, they will die of hunger. So, if the tiger dies, the deers will also die, because they are dependent. They are dependent, and in that cycle others will also die. So, that is like that. So, this young tribal boy who did not possibly have, he is still there, he possibly does not have any degrees in environment science and all that, botany or science, but he understood this very much and started planting trees in that island. And today there is thick forest of 550 hectares where there is a forest. So, one man's forest at Majuli Island is a beautiful example what voluntary action can do. I have been telling you that we must work in group, but here is an example who as a single individual could plant so many, mostly bamboos and all that. Once a forest was created, there is water, today elephants also come there, other animals are sustained, whole chain of life is prospering there. That is a beautiful example, nobody else has done it. But then you can multiply examples from all over the world. Sneha Sahi who is a PhD student at Ashoka Institute of Research, he managed to clear 700 kgs of waste from coastline. As you know, the plastic that you throw in the drains in front of your house ultimately reaches the rivers, and from rivers they reach the sea. And these plastics, once they reach the sea, they do not decompose so easily. They choke the sea. Reefs are dead. So many animals get microplastics into their body, and what happens is that they start dying. So, there are many people who have done this, who have cleaned up, but the amount of plastic, amount of undesirable things that you leave it to the sea directly and indirectly is so huge that it is almost difficult. Even if the entire mankind goes and works in the sea, we cannot clean it up. The only way is to stop throwing, That is why single use plastics are so dangerous, because it cannot be recycled. We must not throw it, we must ensure that it is recycled and upcycled. Now, there is a two concept. One is a concept of say recycling, another is a concept of upcycling. Suppose you are throwing out the plastic packets. Now, if you reprocess it back into plastic say bags, then you are recycling it, reusing it. Now, you can upscale it sometime, convert it into better things. Say it is then converted into say textile, it is a kind of upscale. Now, it is converted into granules used in road making. So, that is what is needed, that how to reuse, recycle, then upcycle. These are three uses. Reuse it, time and again use it is reuse it, then break it up and again make that thing, that is also recycling, and then upcycling, making a product more costlier, more useful from a product which you have thrown out, which is for that moment you can say it is of no use, but it is put to use, better use. So, that is very important. You cannot protect the environment by just cleaning up. By just cleaning up you cannot, because you have to adopt the formula reuse, recycle and upcycle. And how can you do that? Science has to work day and night to find ways and means of recycling, upcycling the products. Once it is used and thrown, thinking that it has no use, you have to find use for it, and as far as possible recycle and upcycle. So, that will save the world, not just going and cleaning. Cleaning is very important, because without cleaning other species in the sea will die. Unfortunately, we have found that most of the fishes also carry this microplastic in their flesh, blood and flesh. So, we are all eating it also. Microplastic is getting into our system. So, you know how the cows who is loiter in the streets of India, they even sometimes unconsciously consume the plastic bags, and many die out of it. Some get into disease, some suffer a lot of hardship, and they suffer. And we say we love cows. Yes, we love cows, Go Mata, but we do not take care to prevent cows from eating away plastic unconsciously, because you throw it in our dustbins, we do not segregate. We have to segregate what can be recycled, what cannot be recycled, what can be converted into compost, what cannot be converted into compost. And we have to develop a foolproof system of say managing the garbage that we create every day. Garbage management is a huge task and it requires lot of volunteers. Similarly, Sanju Soman has been working with vulnerable communities and wetland conservation. Wetland, you know, the best example of wetland is Sundarbans in Bengal. In West Bengal, just little below Calcutta, Hooghly, there is a huge wetland forest or In popular Odia or Bengali it is called Daldal, and mangroves are there. Similarly, near Kendrapada also you find Paradip and Kendrapada, we also find small patches of mangroves in Odisha. Same in Tamil Nadu also we find mangroves in a small patch, but you find like Sundarbans huge patches of mangroves in Kerala. So, whether it is Kerala, whether it is West Bengal, these are the two areas, states of India which has large tracts of mangrove. Of course, there is also little mangrove in Tamil Nadu and little in Odisha near Kendrapada coast. So, these mangroves are dying for various reasons, and it has caused, once mangroves are dead and all that, whenever there is a tsunami, then what happens is that water comes in huge amount and it affects us. And you know, the fear of tsunami is more on the Bay of Bengal coast than on the Arabic coast. So, you do not find tsunamis on Kerala coast, but you do find tsunami in Bay of Bengal coast, that is from Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and West Bengal. So, that is, these are the states which are vulnerable to tsunami, and down the south you go, more vulnerable they are. Comparatively, Bengal is less vulnerable, Odisha is still less vulnerable, but Tamil Nadu is highly vulnerable. So, if there is a earthquake in Indonesia, in Bali and all that place, we get tsunami also in India. In recent 20 years, we have seen how tsunami has killed large number of people near Pondicherry and Chennai. It did affect India in a big way, though we were saved in Odisha in terms of saving lives, but Tamil Nadu had to pay a very heavy price. Pondicherry and all that area had to pay a very heavy price in terms of property and life. That is quite unfortunate. Now, these kinds of mangroves provide little protection against tsunami. They provide little protection against tsunami. So, this Daldal area, which is swampy area, it also supports number of wildlife. Like you know, in Bengal, the Royal Bengal tiger are found in Sundarbans. You find several types of crocodiles, magar, both in Odisha and Bengal, various kinds of crocodile. There is a crocodile park in Madras also, or Chennai as it is called today. So, what happens is that we are losing these mangroves very fast, and this Sanju Soman worked for conservation of wetland. You know, in Madras also we have constructed multi-storied buildings, 50 floor, 40 floor in an area which was previously wetland. Today it is near your Gindi, near the sea, there was a huge wetland which has been converted into tidal park, and this tidal park is the headquarter of all important IT companies, including Infosys, Wipro and all that. And when there was a flood, all these companies were flooded. Even their parking area was flooded. So, they had to be closed for some time. Why this happened? Because the wetland around the Madras city or Chennai city was converted into buildings. So, we also find the Bhubaneswar is at the foothills of the Eastern Ghat, you know, Barunai Pahada is there, Barunai and all that is there. And normally it cannot, it drains out, Bhubaneswar drains out into Mahanadi and Kathajodi and Kuakai very nicely. But unfortunately, because of we have choked the natural drains of Bhubaneswar, so what happens is that this water cannot go into the river system. And once the water does not go into river system, you find of all places in Bhubaneswar, which is on the foothills of the Eastern Ghat, you find there is flood like situation in many places of Bhubaneswar. Whether it is, you know, in recent past about 15-20 years ago, there was a flood in Jatni and Pipali, unimaginable, but it happened precisely because our natural drains, we have started constructing buildings on our natural drain. The drain water does not get drained out so easily, rain water. You know, ISKCON temple area, there are many other places in Bhubaneswar, Bairasai, which gets full of water. It is unfortunate but true. Not only in Bhubaneswar, there are several cities in the country which gets flooded precisely because the natural drains have been blocked. Bangalore of late has started witnessing problems. Bangalore was called a city, is still called a city of lakes, but most of the small lakes in Bangalore has been filled with building material. Once somebody breaks his old building and the material is dumped into the lakes, and lakes size have become very small, and Bangalore has started getting flooded, which was unheard 100 years ago even. So, this is many of these crises are man-made, not God-made, not nature-made. We have played havoc with the nature, and we have created lot of problems for ourselves. Now, how can you handle these things? We require people who are quite aware, who are public conscious, public spirited, and they carry out voluntarily large number of activities to prevent further construction and to take correctional measures and ensure that water really gets drained out. So, that is what we find, that is why Sanju Soman worked with the vulnerable communities and wetland conservation. Planet is not in danger, but we are. Sometimes we think that all others are in danger, but we are not in danger, but we are also in danger. Soumyaranjan Biswal is from Odisha, and he has also done lot of work for wildlife conservation activities with a focus on protection of olive ridley sea turtles. Olive ridley sea turtles are found in Gahirimatha. They are found in the mouth of river Rusikulya. They come there every year to lay eggs in very large numbers. And what we find is that he has worked tremendously, he has contributed tremendously, so that now what happens is that during the season in which they come near Chilka Lake and all that, now tourists are not allowed, and people have been educated nearby those villages who were eating away those turtles. They were killing the turtles and eating away. There are many people, during the winter you find Chilka Lake, large number of birds come to Chilika, but it also becomes a time of poachers. People kill the birds and eat it away. Now, if you start killing the birds, those who come from Siberia, imagine thousands of kilometers these birds travel to Chilika Lake, or these olive ridleys travel to river Rusikulya's mouth in Ganjam district for laying eggs, then what happens is that you will find a time when all these will get extinct. And there are few people in around Chilika. I have taken the name of only Soumyaranjan Biswal. There are many others who have villagers who have worked very hard to protect the birds and to protect the ridley, olive ridley. Now, what is your job? If you can find out a cause for nature nearby your village, you must also try to save wildlife. You will have opportunities, even if you are not in, say, Majuli of Assam or near Rusikulya river's mouth in Ganjam, but everywhere, whether you are near Simlipal, we are near elsewhere and all that, you can plant trees. That is the minimum that you can do. The minimum that you can do is that you can plant more trees, and just not plant, but ensure that they survive. Okay.